WNST, Towson, Baltimore. Baltimore positive. It is the pollen season around here. Must be a big race this week. We're going to be skipping the crab cake tour this week because I got lots of things going on. We have a crab race at Lexington Market on Wednesday. We hope everybody comes down at noon, trying to revive the Preakness mojo around here. Maryland Lottery is giving me these 50th anniversary scratch. I'll also be giving these away up in Falston on Tuesday at the local from 2 until 5. I mean, I'm here and I'm going to have a Gucci experience up there. Restaurant Association of Maryland said Chef of the Year, the whole deal. We'll be there 2 to 5 up in Harford County. That is on the 23rd. And I have a litany. I mean, I have a whole calendar of Baltimore crab cake tours that we'll be doing around town. All are brought to you by Window Nation as well. 866-90-NATION. You buy two, you get two free throughout May, and 0% financing for 5 years. I hope this guy's got 0% financing for the next 5 years. This guy has been my friend, and every year he comes on, and every year we do this tap dance. He came from Kentucky here many, many years ago. We met when I was young, but he was a little older, back in the late 80s at the Baltimore Sun. He covered horse racing here when it was a glorious sport in our state, and they were going to put slot machines and casinos and all that together in 1990 and never did. He went back to Kentucky many, many years ago, made a life at the Daily Racing Forum. He taught me how to read the form many, many moons ago with Vinnie Perrone and Chris Thomas and Charlie Ekman and the dearly departed Clem Florio out at Hi Ho Pimlico. Marty McGee joins us here. He's no longer one of us. He's no longer a journalist. You've taken the step to the other side. Dude, how are you? What's going on? Are you allowed to even pick winners in the race this week? Or you're no longer like a journalist, you're like a regular citizen.
I am a civilian, Nestor. Thanks for having me. Life is great. I've been retired 10 days now from Daily Racing Form. That'd be a total of 38 years that I was a racing journalist. First, of course, as you mentioned, with the Sun Papers, left there in January 92, kind of kicked around for a few months. DRF me up in May of 92. First gig was at good old Monmouth Park up in New Jersey. And I really did. I lived the dream. I detailed in my farewell story that ran on Derby Day on DRF.com about I'd spent X number of years here, there, and elsewhere. But Maryland was my number one non-Kentucky itinerary or place where I laid my head down at night for so many years. It probably totaled up to 7 or 8 years. But I miss you guys back in Maryland. I wish I was there for Preakness week, but I got a new gig. I'm the agent for jockey Joe Talamo. Hardcore racing fans will know that he spent 13 plus years out in California being a star. He's come here to Kentucky where the purses are great. We won our first race on Sunday. The purse was for a maiden race. Get this, Nestor. The total purse for a maiden race here on Sunday was $120,000. So the winner got 70,000. The jockey gets 10% of that, which is 7, and I get a slice of that. So I'm making a living so far. It's hard to scare up mounts now. There's 25 to 30 really good riders on the Kentucky circuit. So I've been out this morning. I was out before I came on the show early Tuesday morning, but I am allowed to make picks. Nobody really cared then or now. I don't know.
You cash tickets. I've seen you at the window. I've seen you large.
Course, yeah.
I've seen you making it rain up there in the press box. I've seen it.
That's the fun part. Is I got into this back in the mid '80s because I thought you could just drink beer in bed all day, but no, it's not really like that. Now I'm back.
How did you get here? Did Dale Austin? Did he have I saw Ross Petticord. John Waite played the draw on Monday night down at the Guinness Brewery, and I went down. And I had a great time. My buddy John Allen joined me, and I ran into Ed Stilk and a whole bunch of friends. And John Waite was great, and the draw and all of that. But dude, I don't recognize this from Charlie Ekman and seeing Howard Cosell walking through on Preakness Day and the gold jacket and the wide shoulders and the big 6'5" behemoth that he was with the cigar, and going up to the press box and looking down and seeing Pete Axthelm's name and seeing Jimmy the Greek Snyder's name in their stalls where you could watch the races the other 364 days of the year, but you had to get out because Jack Whitaker was going to be over here. And I mean, I remember the grand nature of all of it. I don't know where it is or what it's going to become. But I'm here and I lament this every year. And you sort of flew into this at the Sun, getting a gig here. And it was your dream. I mean, and you were young, I was young. Man, you lived at the track. I mean, it consumed you. You still you've loved it your whole life.
Well, you're right, because I grew up here in Louisville and I went to my dad wouldn't let me go to the 73 Derby. I was still in the 8th grade, and that's when
Wow.
Secretariat won. But he let me
Is
go
he
when I
still your
became
dad?
what's that?
Is he still your dad?
Yeah.
He kept you away from
But
Secretariat.
well, I was in the 8th grade and he was right about one thing. Kids do not belong at the Derby. I mean, I've stumbled over two.
Oh,
They don't belong there. So he let me go when I was a freshman in high school, let me off a mile from the track, said, have at it. I've been to every one since. So
that's
the one
74 you went?
74. So I've been to 50 in a row now. And I might not go to any more because getting out of there is tough on an old guy. Anyway, I graduated University of Kentucky in 1982. I wanted to get into turf riding. I didn't for a couple of years. Worked for my dad. He sold water treatment chemicals. So I learned how to be a salesman then. And finally, in 1985, a short-lived publication called The Sports Eye uh, dared to go into competition with Daily Racing Form. Of course, that was no good. But it gave me enough time and a foot in the door. It was March of 85 that I March 10th, 1985, I made my first race calls at Pimlico. And I swear that room where I made it, the room has not changed in 38 years.
You called the race?
Well, you call the chart. You call the chart and then it's documented, written down. That's how the data gets in the racing form.
Okay.
Right? Okay, now it's done by Equibase. But anyway, finally, Dale Austin noticed me. Sun, the Morning Sun, back then it was the Morning Sun and the Evening Sun. Ross Petticord, who you mentioned, he was the handicapper for the Evening Sun. Dale got me on with the Morning Sun, and the rest was history. And stayed there for more than 6 years. Dale ended up leaving for the Racing Times in 1991. I ended up leaving in '92 when they started consolidating. You remember that? Did you
I
get a
left in
buyout?
92. Yeah, I left on Martin Luther King Day 1992. I picked up my buyout check and I drove to the Minneapolis Super Bowl. The Thurman Thomas. I mean, literally, so it's January of 92 is when I left. I'd been there 6 years and 9 days, my tenure at the Sun.
I left in January of '92, a little bit before that, and kind of kicked around. And then May of '92 is when the racing form picked me up.
Well, so all these years later, you walk away from whatever it is, journalism, handicap, and writing, being around the track. I mean, I would think you're still around the track. And I always thought, and I've given Dick Girardi a hard time, and I'll do that a little later on this week too. You guys were, I mean, no offense, you were degenerate gamblers. You liked betting on the races. It wasn't like you were just reading the form for sport. You like making money on it. And I was blown away when I was a 17-year-old kid. I mean, you and I laugh about going to that Paul Simon concert. Dude, I was 18 years old then, right? I mean, I was like, think about what 18 represents, and your dad barely let you go to the racetrack, right? I was blown away that you could go up into that press box where I got thrown out last year. I got thrown out of the Pimlico with a legitimate pass. A woman looked at me and says, "You're out of here." And I'm like, I got a pass. I've been coming here for 40 years.
Why? Why did they throw
I
you
have
out?
no, dude, I have the world's all effed up. The Ravens took my press pass after 30 years, and they're making up some bullshit about. I don't even know what I don't even know what they tell people. But nonetheless, the media side of this is it's changed so much. But the thing that blew me away was in that press box, you would go in and you could bet on the races back there. And I thought they'll never do this in baseball or football or whatever. And then you would always see like tennis from Wimbledon, and you'd see you could bet there 35 years ago, and you'd be like, boy, the world's caught up with all you guys, on gambling, betting, baseball. I mean, they've got Ben McDonald reading in the third inning, telling you what you could bet on in the fourth. It's really unbelievable that it took sports this long to catch up with. I will call it the original sin because, I mean, I pimp the lottery and I give tickets out, and you see me play blackjack, but I never had a sports betting thing because my dad never had it, just in a general sense. But I was around all of you who just loved it and ate it up. And when I lost $2, I felt awful. And I watched you guys put down $100 exactas and pull $100 bills out because you really knew what you were doing. All of you did.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. By the way, I paid to go to work a lot. Sometimes I got rewarded extra for it, but a lot of times I
Have
went
you
there.
won more money or lost more money for all of the BS for 40 years of going to Windows, reading for all that you've invested in it, time-wise, life-wise, just on the betting side, not on making a living doing it, but on actual tickets in and tickets out? Are you ahead or behind?
Absolutely way behind. way behind. And anybody who's
And
been in,
you'll admit that.
oh, absolutely.
Dude,
And
there's a
and
reason to never do it.
well, I mean,
I don't want to
I've
say
basically
that, but you
I've
know.
paid for my entertainment. I have no money problems. And
Well, but you've seen people have gambling problems. I mean,
oh, absolutely, it
we
can be a
talk about
terrible
this
thing.
all the time, and
It's a
certainly in the new world here, that the world is caught up to you and Dick and everyone else who bet. And I don't want to say, like, I don't know if you're betting Reds games like Pete Rose or not, right? When I'm at a Reds game with you, but I know there was plenty of betting going on, but never around baseball. I've been on the radio 32 years. I never really knew anybody. I think you bet on baseball a little bit, but I don't even know how to bet on baseball. And now it's like it's become part of the currency of the game. The game needs you to bet on it all of a sudden, as you know, the NFL wouldn't even put their lines on. But
yeah,
and I think all of you always thought that was a little screwy. The people like
yeah.
you that bet on horse racing, you knew everybody was betting on sports, but now it's mainline now.
Yeah, I love betting on baseball. It's just a run line or an odds line, whatever. You've got all these kind of menus for it. But the one thing about horse racing media types, the handicappers who get on the TV and make picks don't bet. Now, I just really think that's wrong. I think if you're actually doing picks for the public, you should be betting your own money, not necessarily exactly what you're picking, but it's a scam and it's phony. And people who get up on TV now doing the sports bets and they're not really betting that, I don't like it.
Well, I feel the same way. I mean, I bring my heart to what I do. I mean, I don't whatever's coming out of this mic's what I really think, not what somebody's paying me to think or
Right.
what I think you might want to hear. Right. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
haven't
that's the
made a
same way as
living
me.
doing that.
Like a lot of times when I made a best bet in the Baltimore Center, whenever I was betting on that horse, believe me, I was not trying to manipulate or this or that or fool anybody. Nuh-uh. It was what I thought, and I was gonna bet. I was gonna back it up with my own money.
All
A
right,
lot
so
of
you
times,
make this transition. And I listen. I would think over 30 years, you're a really good guy. You're a good soul. You're a hard worker. You're all of that. I would think somebody tried to pull you up to do something else and say, "Hey, come work for me in a stable, at a barn, 4-0." Like I would think you had opportunities along life's highway to do other things in the horse racing industry. What about here and now? And listen, I saw John Waite Monday night, and I went with another rock and roll buddy of mine, John Allen. We're there, and John's examining. Like, I wonder how much they're making. I know what this costs to stage this. He knows how the sausage is made for all of this. You know how the sausage is made in the horse racing industry. There are probably places you could have made more money, but you like betting. You feel you make money doing that. You enjoy what you did. But why here and now to work in the capacity of work? Because it's tough. I guess my point with rock and roll is for these. I had Kurt Newman from the Bodines on. They're playing Saturday night. I'm like, man, being 50, 55, 60 in on a tour bus is a tough life. And I think the racetrack in general, for anyone that's not the billionaire with the bow on this weekend, writing the checks from Dubai or whatever, people in the industry, it's a thing I see every year when I would go out there and helicopter into the barn on Thursday and do the alibi breakfast and do all that. I'm like, oh my God, this is a hard, hard life. You have to love these animals.
it really is a hard life, especially for a guy like my brother Paul McGee, who's trained horses for 38 years, getting up at 4:35 every day. Not some days, Nestor, like every day. That's the key. It's every day. Since I became an agent 10 days ago, I've been up early every day, 4:35. I was already out this morning out at Churchill Downs, just strolling the backside, trying to come up with mounts. Reason though that I quit racing journalism is I was tired of it. It was 38 years. Every winter over the last 20, most of the last 26 winters, I've had to travel somewhere. First of all, it was Oakmont Park, and then it was Florida. I mean, Florida in the winter is nice, but you think about it, January and February, pretty much anywhere is not any good. It gets dark at 5 o'clock. What are you going to do after that? Drink? No, you just kind of watch TV and fall asleep at 7:30 or 8, get back up 5:30 the next morning and do it all over again. So I got tired of that. I'm not going to have to travel as much as Joe Talamo's agent. Um, but it is hard work. It's a full-time job. People say, why don't you just do both? There's no way. It's like having two full-time jobs right
And
now.
you represent multiple jockeys, or is this is your only
Just
gig?
all you need is one right now, the way the purses are here. And Joe Talamo is actually married to my niece, Elizabeth.
That's
Uh,
beautiful. All right, so it's a family
yeah,
business. Good.
I was one of the lectors or readers at their wedding in San Diego. And
Like a Judas Priest.
yeah, in November of 2015. So, yeah, well, I have a long history with Joe. He trusts me. He knows that people respect me in the business, and we're trying to leverage that and getting back, back the Ired Ortizes and Joel Rosarios of the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, Marty McGee's here, my longtime friend, one of my mentors around the track many, many years ago. So I went to Guinness the other night, and on Monday night, I'm sitting at the bar with my wife, and a fella who looks like he goes to the track yells over. His name's Joe. He yells over, hey, come on, so I come over. Hey, I was on your Belmont bus for Smarty Jones and for Big Brown. And he said, I didn't go to American Pharoah. So we got onto all this. And he said to me one of the nicest things. He's like, look, I listen to all of them, 105.7, BAL. None of them ever talk about the track. None of them, they treat horse. They don't know anything about horse racing. Why did you, he's asked me, how did you fall in? I said, well, my father never went to my father knew nothing about horse racing, nothing about auto racing. My dad was traditional Scranton, Pennsylvania, boxing, basketball, baseball, football, sort of kind of in that order, but not a gambling guy, stood in soup lines with Herbert Hoover in 1929, like the whole deal. So didn't bet on things. So I when I went to the track for the first time, it was out of pure curiosity of having seen Vince Bagley read the 7th, 8th, and 9th, results on the 6 o'clock news and seeing the hats. And of course, I was 5 with Secretariat, okay? So Seattle Slew affirmed, Aladar, spectacular bid. I'm not reading. I just know these things, right? So not 77, 78. So now I'm 10, 11, 12. And then like Codex and those horses kind of came along. But then I worked at the paper and then spend a buck. I'm trying to think of the beautiful chestnut with Charlie Whittingham. Give me that horse.
Ferdinand.
I met Ferdinand in the grass. And the story of Ferdinand, Google it. It's one of the saddest because it was the first horse that I touched that horse and I'm like, oh my God, what a beautiful creature. I was 18 years old. I'm a punk from Dundalk. I barely met a squirrel in the backyard or a finch. I didn't see moving creatures that weren't my dog or a cat in the neighborhood. My wife still gives me grief. She was telling Ross Petticourt, he's never been on a horse. So I went out to the track. I saw Howard Cosell that day. I ran film for Gene Boyers at the News American back to South Street so all the ladies with the pictures and the hats could be in the special section. This is 1984, 85, 86, and Spend a Buck happened, and you happened in my life, and we became friends. I don't know why you liked me or I liked you, but you saw me at the track. I was quite the whippersnapper at 16, 17, working at the paper with a press pass, right? And
Yes, you were.
and it was a vibrant room of people. I walked into that room at the top of Pimlico. I didn't know much of anything. I expected more people to be there. I don't know that I even had a guys and dolls thing about it being a bunch of old white guys with stogies and hats or whatever. I don't know what I expected to see, but I found a racetrack that was falling apart and that I had the first time I ever went there. It's still there. It'll be there this weekend and until that point. But I found such interesting people and I had such admiration for Chris Thomas, for Charlie Ekman, and the fact that they were there every day and I don't think I've ever admitted this, and I'm being clean with you, okay? Full on clean. I just wanted to be around them to be great. Yeah, I thought if I hung out with Chris Thomas and I hung out with Charlie Ekman, maybe one day I could be like them. You know what I mean? And
They
you
were
were in the
great.
middle of it. You were in the
They were
middle of it.
great
Ross,
guys.
Charlie Lamb, I'm Dick
Charlie,
Girardi in the early days.
Rich Petro was doing the picks for the News
Oh God,
American.
well, Pete is battling dementia. The last time I saw Pete was at the Guinness factory. His daughter listens to the show. His family listens to the show. But Pete came down for a Baltimore Sun News American sports reading. You should come back for it. It's in September. It's at Guinness, or October. Stan Rappaport and Molly Dunham Glassman do an event where we all get together and drink a beer and tell old stories. Pete came down, and he's not focused, but focused enough that you can give him some love. So I got to see Pete, and I should have bet on. We went down to Bowie one day, and he gave me sole proprietor, and I didn't bet it and box it the way I should have, and I lost about $800. But nonetheless, I didn't lose, but I didn't win. You know what I mean? It's racetrack.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, give me what you found because you came in from Kentucky. I mean, I don't even know if you knew who Charlie Ekman. You probably didn't know anything about Chris Thomas or any of these people, but these were my heroes as a 13-year-old boy, and now I'm 55 and having done this for 25 years here and 32 years on the radio. I have I think a lot about that, dude. I think, and especially when I got thrown out of there last year, I think a lot about it.
They all treated me like a prince. Charlie Ekman loved it. He used to conduct the 10 National World Series of Handicapping in the fall. And I came in fourth one year, and I remember he was really hyping me and everything. That was 1986. And he was the MC and all that. And then Chris Thomas,
Believe
what
you
a
me,
cool
this
guy.
this McGee kid, he knows what he's doing.
That's
You
what,
can go to
exactly
sleep
what
on
he
them
would say.
cherries. You can go to sleep on them cherries.
Exactly what he would do. And then Chris Thomas, what a great human being he was. Just he was such a lovable guy. You know, one time I remember him on the just watching television when Pete Maravich died. You remember this? And Chris
I,
was on there, and he said, "Ask not who for whom the bell tolls; it tolls for thee." Pete Maravich died at age 40 or whatever it was. And I just remember, I said, "Man, Chris, you are awesome." And he died a very premature death, which really made me sad.
I tweeted about him this morning, so to bring his name up today really means something. Steve Dumig, the big dog from Tampa, was a sports radio larger than life personality. He was a golf encyclopedia. And he was the one that brought all the energy to the Tampa Lightning when they came to town. Nobody knew a puck from a truck in Tampa, and he adopted it, and he died prematurely. But after my wife battled, his wife had a cancer battle, and we became friends, and he died tragically. But I went down to Tampa. It's right after my wife got sick. So it must have been 6 or 7 years ago. And I was planning maybe a Super Bowl party for the Ravens or something. And I went down to the studio. The studio he broadcasted from, he took me into the studio. It was the Chris Thomas studio.
Wow,
So
that
this
is awesome.
morning, today is the anniversary of his death, the big
Oh,
dog. It was his fourth anniversary, I believe, of Steve's death. And I saw it at 5 this morning, and I tweeted about Chris Thomas. So the fact that I have you on, spirits are flying Preakness
that's
week
right.
around here, right?
And there were so many other guys, Nestor, like Jack Mann. He was a brilliant man. He went to 1 year of college. He would write his column in the Evening Sun, which you could get I would get it, go to Mount Washington Tavern, then on the way home, maybe get something to eat and pick up an Evening Sun and read Ross Pettigord's picks and what Jack Mann had written. And invariably, he'd have one or two or three words in his story that I knew not what he was even talking about. He was such a great writer.
Jack
Andy,
Mann's
Andy,
a reputation on our desk with Mike Marlowe and Bob Nussgart was Jack. You don't edit Jack Man. You don't need to edit Jack. And writers that had that reputation, being a kid there, dude. Everything in my life that's ever come from good came from those 6 years of my life being around
right.
effing professionals like
Me
you
too.
and just being taught the right way to do things. So when people come to me and say, "Why do you fight with Bisciotti and Angelos?" I'm like, "Because they're doing things the wrong way." And
Right.
I give no quarter on that.
You're
Like
right.
they're
Totally
just
agree.
flat out taking people's press credentials because you don't like the look of their hair is
Right.
not that's not cool. And I stand with those people from 40 years ago that were serious MFers, serious cats
Yeah.
about journalism and accountability and what LASIX was and cheating and scamming and doping and all of those things that you were responsible for writing about out there.
Yeah, we were. I was. And just having Dale Austin as my mentor, he had the courtesy to die on Preakness Week about 5 or 6 years ago, so that we could all come and see his widow Anne, who has since passed on too. And Dale taught me things that I still remember. That don't call a guy in print. Don't use that or which. Don't say like. Say such as. There were a dozen different things that to this day I still remember that Dale taught me. Andy Byer was around. He didn't really mentor me, but just his presence, just his aura, and just
You always
listening
knew
to
when he was at
anything
the
he
track,
said.
right? He
Yeah,
always sat up on the right, and it was always
yeah.
don't talk to Andy.
And just there were so many guys there who really
Clem, come on, give me a Clem
the
story.
greaser. Sweet papa, pop, pop, pop. Oh, Marty,
Oh, you
yeah,
baby doll.
yeah,
Oh, you look at it. He's sweating out there. He's ready to run. Hey, Marty, he's ready to run. Let me tell
that's
you,
right.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were just so many of them, and I miss them all. And they gave me such a great foundation to go on and do what I did, in the 30 plus years after that.
I love you, Marty McGee. Marty McGee, former daily racing form. He's an independent now. He's out doing some things on the tracks. So you're not coming up for the race this week or anything. Give me a little primer. Okay, so somebody flies in. They like our little fun chat about the old days and whatever. And I think Joe from Guinness will appreciate it the most because he's an old racing guy. Give me a fly-in. I mean, Bob Baffert and I text last night, right? So Girardi came on 2 weeks ago. I don't follow a lot of this, right? I mean, Girardi came on 2 weeks ago and said Bob can do the Preakness. I went to the draw last night. Everybody that was there didn't think Baffert was in the race. Like, people don't know. They don't know because they don't have anybody like you covering it and people reading the Sun and Bagley on the air and me on the like. I mean, these dopes over at 105.7 don't know a horse from a course, right? So I like literally nobody knows anything. I was at the draw and nobody knew like literally. So Baffert's in the race, and I'm there. I'm like, Baffert's in the race. Okay, so I text Bob. Bob texts me back. Bob said, I'm not doing Zoom. We give a little love back and forth. Bob's not coming on the show this week. Bob came on the show right before he was suspended 2 years ago. Bring people up to speed on the state of the industry and what you need to know if you're going to the race this week about the future of the Preakness, the Triple Crown. What's news? Because it never changes, but we're always talking about changing it.
Well, it's kind of in a state of flux, especially in terms of Pimlico and Laurel. You know, they had the $380 million they were going to spend. I don't know where that stands. Supposedly, the state of Maryland is going to take over at some point from the Stronach Group. I don't know how or what. I don't really know the details on that. But, Bob Baffert, his 2-year suspension from Churchill Downs, not running in the Derby. I guess that's over. I haven't seen the first thing written about what's going to happen vis-a-vis, could he run a horse this week at Churchill Downs, or can he run one in the Derby next year? You know, it's been such animosity between the two parties, Baffert and his lawyers versus Churchill Downs and his lawyers. Meanwhile, we had this catastrophic week at Churchill Downs pre-Derby with 7 equine deaths, 2 or 3 up at Keeneland before that. So the animal rights people are all breathing down our necks. There's a lot of infighting within the industry, and meanwhile, Bob is his crisis has sort of been given third or fourth shrift behind all these other
What if he wins the race this week? He comes right back to the front, right?
I'd love to see him win, and he's got a good chance. It's only an 8-horse race in the Preakness with National Treasure 4-1 on the morning line. I don't know this horse. I don't know much about this horse, but the fact that Mage could bounce. He's the only Derby returnee. I think it's the first time I heard since 1948. We've only had one Kentucky Derby horse run back in the Preakness.
Why is that? Is it the 2 weeks?
The 2 weeks is it. I don't know if that means the Triple Crown's coming apart or what, or if they're all going to regroup and take the 5 weeks from the Derby into the Belmont, which quite a few of them are.
Well, I mean, that's really screwed the Preakness. And I guess this all started the day we met with Spend a Buck in 1985, right? I mean, that's only been 40 years ago, but this thing's been unraveling because this isn't good for the horses, right? Like we talk about this every year. There's no way your brother would have a horse that's worth $5 million and think about in any way injuring that horse if it finished second and there's not enough money to come here and there's more money and New York's bigger than Baltimore and Baltimore doesn't have his ish together for all of this and hasn't in a long time. I mean, I'm worried about it, Marty, and I'm worried about it every year this time of year.
I am too. And this is a very selfish thing to say, Nestor, but I'm glad I'm 63 in this industry, not 23 in this industry, because its future is very murky. As I said, that animal rights people, they've closed down Circus and SeaWorld and a number of other things. Dog racing, which I used to love down in Florida to go to the dog races. And those dogs now just aren't going to exist. They're not going to be bred. So, I mean, pick your poison on that. Yeah, there's just so many things going on in this business right now. It's very fluid, and I don't know what else to tell you.
Marty McGee is here. He is still in the business down in Kentucky. I'm not going to make you make picks or anything like that, but I'm still going to bother you at least once or twice a year, and certainly go to a ball game with you at some point if we're local. And I guess you don't get up here for crab cake. I mean, I have a crab cake tour going on, Marty. I built this thing for people like you, tourists, to come down and have a Fadley's crab cake or a Costa's crab cake or take you to Oprah's crab cake at Pappas. I mean, you don't come to Baltimore anymore, right?
Yes,
hey, we got a good baseball team now. We
yes,
do.
I do. I come. You know what I've done about 4 out of the last 6 years is come to Timonium on Travers Day, come to the Maryland State Fair, and go to the races there on.
Go to Nick's, the grandstand.
The last Saturday of August. So I hope to come again this year, Nestor, and I'll definitely give you a buzz if I'm coming in.
Hey, I made it to Saratoga a couple of years ago. My
nice,
wife
nice
and I
spot.
went up. Man, what a when you go there, and the first thing I see as an old, I was 51 when I got there. It was about 4 years ago before the plague. I went up to see Hootie and the Blowfish at SPAC. I was in New York City already. I'm like, let's go. And we'll stop by Sarah. And we got there 6th, 7th race. It wasn't Travers weekend, but it was a stakes. It was a Saturday. I mean, it was a big day. There were a lot of people there. And it's just the gentility of the blankets and the picnics and you go there, you're like, oh, look, I'm in a 1958 postcard. Isn't it lovely? And I'm thinking to myself, what Pimlico could be, what racing could be here, what it should be here. It is great on Saturday. If you go out to and we get weather this week, these are great events. They really are. I still tell people the Kentucky Derby is the one event. If anybody comes to me and says, what should I go do? I'd say, go to the Derby. It's the greatest day in sports. I believe that.
It is, and I've been to 50 of them, and it is a great thing. And the Preakness is like Derby Day Redux. It is just a fun thing to do, and yeah, I highly encourage people to go out there this Saturday.
Get a hat. Get a hat. Marty McGee, formerly of the Daily Racing Forum. Long time, short time. Now working with jockeys and working with the track and living a good life. I think we were going to put you out to stud at any point, but at 63, about to get there. Take care of yourself, Marty. Love you, man.
All right,
Appreciate
buddy.
you.
You too, buddy.
Nobody knows more about the game than Marty McGee. Dick Girardi will be here this week. I appreciate Joe over at Guinness at the John Wayne concert the other night for inspiring me to chase down Donna Brothers and Kenny Mayne and Randy Moss and anybody else that's willing to come on the program here this week. We did not land Bob Baffert, but that does not mean we will not land him in the future. We will be landing Maryland Lottery tickets in Falston at the local on Tuesday from 2 until 5. We are doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour up at the local. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery and our friends at Window Nation, 866-90 Nation. If you need windows, make sure you're taking care of them. Tell them I sent you there. We'll be there 2 to 5. And then the Maryland Crab Cake Tour, I've set dates now all over the city. I get a date in Anne Arundel County, I get 2 in Harford County, 1 in Carroll County, all over Baltimore County, all over the city. I saw Mayor Brandon Scott the other night. We talked about having a crab cake together. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going down this summer. It's my 25th anniversary on August the 3rd. I will be crowing about it because if I don't, who will? I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Preakness, memories, and magic, and Baltimore positive. Stay with us.